Hey guys, the first thing I want to do to this Bumblebee is make sure that it rolls smoothly and stops. So in this episode, I'll be taking off all the brakes. We'll also be removing the rear trailing arms, pushing out the stub axles, and removing the bearings. Then I'll pack the brakes up and send them off to PMB for rebuilding. Now this car has not been touched in decades, so I'm bracing myself. Going up. First challenge is that I can't seem to get some of these lug bolts out. I don't know if maybe some paint got in there or whatever. Now fortunately I can access the lug bolts from the back and hit it with some MAP gas, a hot torch. This should do it. Alright, that's one victory. We're going to take off the castle nut to remove the stub axle. And to do that, I need to pull the cotter pin out, so I'll straighten it first. Okay, that's out. And now I'm going to grab a 30mm impact socket, put it on my impact gun here, and hopefully it will come out. And of course, it's stuck. So I'll hit it with the MAP torch for a few minutes and see if that helps things at all. Not yet. More with the hot wrench. Try again. All right, gonna use some PB Blaster. Get them soaking overnight. Well, the impact's not working, so I put a couple of the lug bolts in here and got a pipe. I set it up so that I can then use a breaker bar and lean on this. Let's see if that works. So let's see, I'll put my foot here. You're gonna put your whole weight on it, make sure you're holding on to something. Man, it's stuck. Frustration is part of the game when you're restoring a car. I find when I'm losing patience with something, I like to take a walk away and maybe work on something else for a little bit. So I'll take a little break and work on the brakes. Now I want to take off the caliper, so got a 19mm wrench. Of course it's stuck because it's old, so I'm going to take a rubber mallet. Oh, there you go. It's actually coming loose now. Considering that this thing still won't come off, that's not bad. So I'm not going to take the bolt completely out because I don't want it to fall. So I'm going to get the other one now. Yep, it's free. I did squirt some PB Blaster in there last night, so maybe that helped. I'm working out position. Hopefully it'll break free. And it did. Now we'll see if there's any brake fluid in the car. Doubt it. Nope. Dry as a bone. A momentous occasion. The bolt actually came off the car. Wouldn't be surprised to see that it's kind of glued to the rotor. Watch your fingers. Yay! And it's off. To get the rotor off, there's two screws here, and they're usually just a regular slotted screwdriver, which make things difficult. This one's a little loose. Oh, that one's loose too. Interesting. Look at that. And this rotor actually needs to get thrown away. See, there's a ridge here. It's worn. If I even got it resurfaced, it would probably be not that much left to it, so new ones.
Okay, the break is over. It's time to get back to the battle.
Big hammer. Well, I gave it a good shot. For like the past 4 days, I've been coming down, hitting it with PB Blaster, heat, impact gun, all this kind of stuff. But I think I have to give up and use Mr. Cutter here, cut the nut off, and just be careful that I don't hit the threads. I do have spare axles if I do, but I think it's the only way this one's getting off. I'm gonna just cut a slice through here, try to avoid any of the important bits. And now also put the chisel in here and see if I can get split it a little. Oh my God, I finally got it. Oh, wow. Look what I had to do to it. Mangle it, but got it off. I win. Now, will I get lucky pounding that out? I kind of ruined the threads there, so I'll need a new stub axle, so I'm not going to worry about protecting it. Oh yeah, look at that. Well, small miracles.
Okay, here's the anatomy of a 914 axle. This here is a CV joint, constant velocity joint. It moves in a lot of different directions. Right above that is the stub axle. This is the part that goes into the hub, and this is what gave us all that trouble before. On the other end of the axle is another CV joint, and that is what connects to the transmission. We'll be refurbishing these in another episode.
All right, we'll get the dust shield off here. Assuming this is not frozen too. It probably is. Oh, well, it actually came out. No, that one actually came pretty free. And there's one more on this side here, but you can't get the ratchet in. I'm gonna have to do that with a spanner. I'll give this a tap. That up. All right, dust shield off.
And now it's time to take the shock nut off. I'll put a vice grip on the other side to immobilize the other end of the bolt while I bang on this and try to break it free.
Now for the top of the shock, which has been painted over because it's garbage. I'm going to use the impact because I need quick torque to break the nut free. Now this will come down. Now we can see inside the trailing arm. There's lots of gunk in there. See how we have to push out the bearing. That'll come later. But for now, gotta get that puppy off. Got our 22 millimeter socket on this. Make sure we're on good. Okay, now I just gotta take these 3 bolts out that are into the console so that the trailing arm can come down. No, that's good. Okay, I got the 3 bolts holding the console out and this drop down. This is where you could really use some help, use a hand, because the thing's heavy. Try to pull it out without hurting myself. And it's out.
Now we'll put the trailing arm on the bench and take the other nut off.
You can see these holes here allow for the slight pivoting. So when you do the rear wheel alignment, there's some play. That's why these holes are large.
Well, the right side definitely had its challenges. On the left side, I had the opposite issue, where the axle nut spun off really easily, but the stub axle splines seemed to be welded to the hub. I mean, I hit it hard with a hammer, a lot, and it didn't even budge. I've never had that on any of the 914s that I've worked on. So it's time to go to the least used but most useful tool in the garage, the shop press.
And got this on the press, and I'm just gonna try to press this axle out a little bit. Should probably just need to a little bit of force to get the splines free. Shouldn't need to do a lot. And then I just put a little nut in there, just so I'm not pressing on the actual axle. Not taking much force. And there it goes.
If you like watching this build, please subscribe to my channel. Now that the car is here, I should be doing a new episode at least every week, and there should be probably 20 episodes in this series to get the car back on the road. So click the subscribe button and give it a thumbs up while you're at it.
Now, since the trailing arm is out of the car, I can attack getting the hub out from the inside. If it was in the car, I'd have to use some sort of like slide hammer just because there's not enough room to work. But here, I can take this 1-inch socket on an extender, put it in there, and then just keep hitting. Just a little more. I knew it was gonna fall, but it's out. No harm, no foul. And the race did not get hung up on it, which is nice. So this will clean up nicely and get reused.
Now, when I pounded the hub out of the left side trailing arm, the race came with it, exposing the balls and the ball bearing in here. So I have to get this off, and the secret to that is heat from the map torch.
Hot. Chisel keeps slipping, so I'm going to cut a little groove. Take our socket, 13 millimeter, pull off the cover for the bearing. Okay. Oh yeah, it's a good thing that we're going to be replacing this bearing. There's quite a bit of dirt around.
And now it's time to take it back over to the shop press.
Use the 65 millimeter bearing tool here. I'm not going to put a lot of force on it. Yep, it's coming out, I can feel it. That would be the bearing out. And here's the bearing itself.
Okay, now that the rear is finally done, it's time to move to the front and deal with those calipers. On these front calipers, there's a tab which locks the caliper bolt in place, and we need to pry that up so we can remove the bolt.
Also, don't forget, when you're working on the front end, you can pivot the wheel to give yourself a little more space so you can see what you're doing there. I know it sounds stupid, but don't ask me how I thought to tell you that. Also, with the front wheel, you have room in here to put a ratchet, which makes things a lot easier. I'll use a breaker bar to get this one off after bending that tab. Breaker bar makes easy work of that. I'll undo the brake line with the flare wrench. That's broken free now. Take the caliper bolts out. Okay, so here's the retaining piece that's off with the other bolt. Everything's clear. Now we try to get the caliper off. There it is, ready to go to PMB. Wow, you can see that things weren't really set up right on this car. Look at the wedge. Wow.
All 4 of my calipers are headed to PMB Performance in Utah for a total rebuild, but they request that I do a few things to them before I box them up. This is one of the rear brake calipers, and the important thing to remove here is the adjuster gear. So I'm going to hope that this turns, because a lot of times they're stripped. Oh, it actually did turn. When they refurbish this, they're going to put a beefier hex socket in there. And now we'll fish for the adjuster gear. Almost. Here we go. Ta-da! That's the adjuster gear. That's how you set the rear venting clearance on these calipers. But PMB likes you to take these out when you ship them. So that's going off to the side. The other thing PMB wants us to do is remove the bleeder screw, because if it breaks in shipping, it's really hard to get out. So I've got my 7mm wrench, and let's see if I can, yep. All right, ooh, look at that. Caliper is full of fluid. Another reason why I had the towel here. I'll do this one. Of course, this is the one that's stripped. So I'm going to cut a little notch in here. There we go, he broke it. Just hold a little pressure against the side. Pull it out. There we go. And some calipers have 2 bleeder screws, one here and one here. When you're trying to free these, you don't want to just provide like constant torque on it. You want to try to snap it so that it breaks the seal or whatever it's holding it together. If you go low and slow, you run the risk of rounding off the edges. And now it's time to pack these up. Well, I dealt with some seriously stuck bolts in this episode, and it took me like 4 days to get through everything. While the brakes are on their way to PMB, I'll turn my attention to the steering rack and the wire harness, which I'm sure will present its own set of fun. Please subscribe so you can follow along with the process, and click the little bell so you'll be notified whenever there's a new episode up. Thanks again to 914 Rubber for providing a lot of the parts for this build. They're an amazing company. I really appreciate you watching. Be safe and enjoy.